You step into your backyard, see weeds sprouting between the cracks, and your first instinct is to yank them out and toss them. But what if I told you those same weeds were once considered superfoods, life-saving plants so valuable that some were traded, stored, and even worshipped? We're not talking kale smoothies or overpriced health powders here. These were scrappy little plants that grew wild and free, and yet they fueled warriors, healed the sick, and kept entire families alive through brutal winters. So today, we're counting down 10 common weeds that were expensive Native American superfoods. By the end, you'll never look at your backyard the same way again. Let's kick things off with amaranth, a weed most gardeners call pigweed today. But to Native Americans, it was a grain of the gods. The seeds, ground into flour, baked into dense, energy-packed bread. The leaves, boiled or steamed like spinach. Nothing went to waste. And nutritionally, off the charts. High in protein, iron, calcium, and an amino acid called lysine that most grains lack. Think about that. People today spend good money on imported quinoa when amaranth, its cousin, was growing free across the plains and forests. The irony? What we call a nuisance weed was once a survival crop so important it literally shaped diets for centuries. Next up, lamb's quarters, maybe the most underappreciated supergreen in history. This grayish, dusty-looking weed popped up everywhere. Farmers today curse it for invading fields, but to Native Americans, it was treasure. Its leaves rival spinach in nutrition, loaded with vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and fiber. Some tribes even ground its seeds to stretch their flour supplies. Imagine being hungry, scanning the ground, and knowing that the scrappy plant at your feet could give you more nutrition than half the produce aisle today. We rip it out of gardens like it's worthless. They harvested it like it was gold. You've probably stepped on this one. It's that low, creeping plant with fleshy little leaves. Looks like nothing. But purslane was pure magic. Excited. Why? Because it's one of the richest plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids on Earth. That's right, the same stuff we buy in expensive fish oil capsules was coming free from this weed. Tribes ate it fresh in salads, tossed it into stews, or dried it for later. It was refreshing in summer and strengthened the body with minerals like magnesium and potassium. Picture this, you're hundreds of miles from the sea, no fish in sight, and yet you're getting omega-3s from a plant growing between rocks. Talk about a hidden superfood. Purslane was basically nature's supplement aisle. Your lawn's biggest enemy, the one you spray with weed killer every spring, was once one of the most important survival plants in North America. Dandelions were food, medicine, and drink all in one. Roots roasted for a coffee-like brew. Leaves tossed into salads or soups. Flowers steeped into teas with medicinal power. Loaded with potassium, calcium, vitamin K, and natural diuretic properties, they were used to cleanse the body and boost health. What we see as a pest, Native Americans saw as a medicine chest. Imagine paying for expensive detox teas today when the best one might be growing in the cracks of your driveway. If there was a single plant that could do it all, it was the cattail. Tribes called it the supermarket of the swamp. Roots ground into flour, shoots tasted like asparagus, pollen a high-protein powder. And it didn't stop there. The fluffy tops were insulation, the stalks became mats, baskets, even roofing. One plant, food, shelter, warmth, medicine. Imagine walking past a swamp today thinking it's useless, when to Native Americans it was basically a Walmart made of reeds. Nope, not the banana-like fruit. This is that flat, broadleaf weed you've stepped on 100 times. Native Americans nicknamed it the white man's footprint because it spread so fast after settlers arrived. But here's the twist. They didn't curse it. They embraced it. Chewed leaves became poultices for cuts, bites, and stings. Seeds were eaten for fiber, working like psyllium husk today. To them, plantain wasn't a weed, it was a healer. Today, people pay top dollar for natural remedies in health stores. Native Americans, they just pick them out of the dirt. Most of us learn the hard way not to touch nettles. They sting, they itch, they punish. But here's the thing. Once you cook them, they transform into one of the most nutrient-rich greens on Earth. High in protein, iron, calcium, and antioxidants, nettles were boiled into soups and teas. Tribes valued them in spring when winter food stores were gone and bodies craved nourishment. They weren't just food, they were medicine for joints, fatigue, and blood health. What we fear for its sting, they embraced for its strength. Nettles were basically the original multivitamin. Here's a weed you might not recognize: goosefoot. Close cousin to quinoa and just as powerful. Tribes collected its tiny seeds in bulk, storing them for winter. Archaeologists have uncovered goosefoot remains in food pits older than maize farming, proof of its central role. Rich in protein and essential amino acids, it was a survival grain before survival grains were cool. Imagine entire communities thriving on a plant most of us wouldn't bother to bend down and pick today. Forgotten now, but back then, goosefoot was a household name. Those bright red cones you see on roadside sumac, Native Americans use them to brew tangy teas and seasoning powders. Packed with vitamin C, sumac boosted immunity, fought fevers, and made meals taste better. It was their lemon, growing wild in the forest. While we buy imported citrus at supermarkets, they flavored their food with what was already around them. And the flavor? Tart, refreshing, almost like pink lemonade. Survival never tasted so good. Imagine a world with no antibiotics, no pharmacies, no pills. If infection hit, it could wipe out entire families. That's where wild onions and garlic stepped in. Found all across North America, they weren't just seasoning, they were medicine. Their sulfur compounds acted like natural antibiotics, fighting infection, boosting immunity, and adding flavor to otherwise bland meals. To Native Americans, these humble plants weren't garnish. They were life insurance. Think about that the next time you sprinkle garlic powder on your pizza. So, what's the lesson here? Excited that the weeds we ignore, spray with chemicals, or curse in our lawns were once considered treasures. We pay for supplements, detox teas, superfood powders, while the real thing is sprouting free beneath our feet. Native Americans didn't see weeds. They saw medicine, they saw survival, they saw life. So here's my challenge. Which of these weeds would you actually try as food today? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed uncovering survival wisdom that beats half our modern health trends, hit like, hit subscribe, and stay tuned. Because sometimes the smartest solutions for the future come from the forgotten weeds of the past.